Hello everybody. This is part 6 of analysing what took place at Silverstone 2021. Now, if you've not already done so, I would urge you to watch the first 5 parts, which are, you can see the thumbnails on screen right now. If you look at the timings of those, there's over 2 hours worth of videos that I've had to break down in exposing what these supposed experts are informing you, the viewer, about that situation. And the reason I need to do this is to demonstrate to you, to get through to everybody that sees this, the fact that you're being fed a narrative. It's lies. And it's when you start seeing how they do it, what they do, you can then see what took place in Abu Dhabi a lot clearer. And I'm going to move back to Abu Dhabi once I've completed these couple of videos, which will finish off exposing what they did in Silverstone, because this one can't complete it. This one's going to be quite long, but you'll see why. So we go from a situation whereby the crash takes place. Crofty is asking whether Lewis Hamilton could have left more room for Max Verstappen on the outside. Brundle initially describes it as a racing incident. He thinks that Lewis Hamilton was sufficiently alongside to have earned himself space at that corner, but then he backtracks. We get Red Bull allowed to broadcast their message of hate via F1 TVs, interjecting with their radio communications to Massey. You get both Horner and Wheatley vilifying Sir Lewis Hamilton, claiming that you don't put a wheel up the inside at Copse, which is a total fallacy, claiming that Lewis was never anywhere near at that corner, which is a total fallacy, and yet that is selected to be broadcast to the world. You get Jenson Button, a former world champion, asked on his opinion, and he vilifies Sir Lewis Hamilton. You get Damon Hill, a former world champion. He comes down on the side of blaming Lewis, thinking Lewis should get a penalty for it. You get Karun Chandok analysing the situation, determining that Lewis Hamilton is in the wrong. Now, none of them have broken down the footage and explained to you exactly what took place. They tell you things such as, oh, Lewis was wide of the apex. Well, that's irrelevant because the collision took place well before the apex, and they don't tell you that. They tell you that Lewis was understeering. Well, you don't really know that because you'd have found that out the other side of the corner if he hadn't been able to stay on track and would have run Max off the track at the other side of the track because his car wasn't steering round the corner the way it was supposed to be. He never even got to the apex of that corner, and yet they're trying to claim to everybody that, oh, it's understeer that's causing that trajectory that he's on. So all of these things, it's just a narrative. It's a set of excuses that people don't understand the reality of the situation, and yet they take the words of these so-called experts and form their opinion. And a guy is wrongly vilified as a result of it. And that's a problem. And the problem also is with my videos, look at the number of views I get. So I've got 580, 192, 149, 270 and 300. I've also done a video showing you that on that restart of the race, that very first lap of the restart, there's an attempted overtake by Alonso and Daniel Ricciardo at Copse Corner, and there is no collision. Okay, and yet 200 people see that. And we've got the likes of Driver 61 and Chain Bear, and they've done YouTube videos and they vilify Sir Lewis Hamilton. They just repeat the same narrative, and them videos get seen by 800,000 people. So trying to get accurate information out, evidence-based information out to the masses is difficult. And likewise with Abu Dhabi. In Abu Dhabi 2021, 108.7 million people were lied to on the TV. A global audience was lied to. And the problem is, of that global audience, whilst there'll be a proportion that will understand and realise that that wasn't right, and that they will say, oh, something seemed fixed there, okay, or yes, there was definitely a breaking of the rules there, but do we put it down to this notion of a human error? They will not understand the notion of how deeply fixed it was. They will not understand the notion of a narrative being created by TV production, presenting it to them in a certain way to make them believe it to be authentic. So you have to break that narrative down. You have to demonstrate to people what is being done to them for them to finally see it. And once you do that, it blows the whole thing up. And what we get, obviously, the trouble we get with the people, we've got, what, 1,800 people now subscribe to the channel, of which somewhere in the region of 5% are here just to troll, to try and undermine and discredit the channel because they don't like what it presents. It undermines their desires, and either they are, there's something not right with them, and they feel compelled to just continually come here to comment, or they are disruptors. They are contracted somehow to try to disrupt the truth being exposed to more and more people. So what I request of the decent people is to continue to keep sharing the content, to continue to keep trying to get the message out to as many people. That's the only way we can get knowledge to actually spread and get people to see what the truth of the situation is. Okay, I'm just going to keep plugging away. You know, this is what it is. This is the truth. The evidence is there. I'm just going to keep saying it. So, and I'll try and do it in as many ways as possible. And I'll repeat what I'm saying because there's different ways of presenting it. And as time goes by, we can start seeing more and more. And there are comments. I do look at the comments. And even if I don't respond directly to you, it will give me something to think about often. And I will explore certain things. So somebody, it might have been Denny D, it might have been somebody else, sorry if it's somebody else, talked about the 2019 Silverstone Grand Prix. So I went back and had a look and double checked the footage. And yes, the Hamilton-Bottas incident was almost identical. But then we found what happened on lap, was it 4 or 1? I can't remember which lap it was, which was the Norris on Ricciardo incident. Another overtake around Copse. You know, so these are the sorts of things where we can point each other in the right direction for seeking out evidence that proves exactly what we're saying. And there'll be some more in this video which will demonstrate exactly what the truth is. But we have to break through the narrative. So, going back to Silverstone, crash occurred, which was Max Verstappen cutting across the line of Sir Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was attacking Max Verstappen in order to try to make an overtake. There's nothing illegal about that. They approached the braking zone of the corner. They were almost side by side. Lewis Hamilton may have been 30 centimetres behind Max Verstappen at that recognised braking point, at the point in time where he decided he now needs to brake to make it around that corner. Max Verstappen decided to stay on the gas to try to force the issue, to try and force himself ahead of Hamilton around that corner and not yield. The rules of engagement are that at that point in time, you've got to make an assessment, that being, okay, I now have a car on my inside that I need to leave room for. Rather than do that, as is typical for Max Verstappen, he decided to force his way, or attempt to force his way, ahead of Lewis Hamilton, forcing Lewis Hamilton to have to yield the situation. That is his bullying style of driving. That's a style of driving that's not acceptable, and yet the sport, the governing body of the sport, has relaxed the rules to facilitate that style of driving. There's something wrong there. Okay, there's something wrong there because no other driver does that. and yet Max is allowed to get away with it. And so when this incident occurs, and you initially have Crofty, the sports commentator, trying to lay the blame on Sir Lewis Hamilton, trying to say, oh, could Hamilton have left Max more room there? We have Brundle saying, well, I think actually Lewis did enough to be in a position to have earned the right to room around that corner, but then he backs down from that. Two former world champions blame Lewis. This supposed expert that's an absolute nothing, somebody that's had some wealth to go motor racing and had enough wealth to get promoted into the sport of Formula One, but done nothing, is the supposed expert that's able to tell us whether an 8-time world champion, 104 Grand Prix winner, has the ability to do what he was doing. This is the level of expertise we're dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to go through with you the section of what you hear at Silverstone now from Ted Kravitz in the pits firstly, and then all of the extra things spoken about between where we left off and when the race is restarted. So let's go on to which one is it? This tab here, and we'll play you through pausing the various things that need to be spoken about. Here we go.
Max Verstappen, well, he's got to try and, for his position, maybe, I don't know, what do you call it, achieve justice for Max Verstappen being out of this race. But listen, I think
little things like that, they get into the minds of people. Achieve justice for Max.
It will go to the stewards now. We're going to have a hearing. They're going to have a hearing with Lewis Hamilton, you would presume, having had all these deputations from Wolff, Horner and everybody. And we'll know sometime this evening.
So we'll know sometime this evening, but well, we found out within the race, Lewis Hamilton's been awarded a 10-second penalty.
Looking at the diagram that I believe Toto was referring to on the regulations, I've got a copy of actually for the first time, but it's all about, was there enough overlap?
Okay. Martin Brundle, the presented expert of the sport, is saying, looking at the diagram that Toto Wolff has supposedly presented to Michael Massey and the stewards, was there enough overlap? Now, what Martin's pretending here. Martin has been a racing driver in Formula One, in numerous different series. He has been a commentator in this sport at that stage for 28 years. And he's pretending he doesn't know what is right and what is wrong, doesn't know what the rules are with regarding overtaking. Is that authentic? Well, I'll answer that question. The answer is no, it's not authentic. And listen to what he's got to say.
Was he far enough alongside to have earned the right to pass into that corner?
So Martin is asking, was Lewis far enough alongside to have earned the right? And rather than be able to identify that this is the state of play between the two cars going into that corner, so that's the 50-metre marker board there where I'm waving my cursor. This is Lewis Hamilton's car relative to Max's car, and it might well be that Lewis was actually slightly further forward at some point, either half a second before or half a second after this. Okay, so therefore he's definitely more than halfway alongside. They can't break it down and show you, the viewer, the exact location of Sir Lewis Hamilton and cross-reference that to these diagrams. Now I'm going to leave a link in the description to this document, and it's dated 2014. Some of these strap-on fanboys were still soiling their nappies back in 2014. All the time you have to leave space. The one move rule, no weaving down the straights. It talks about weaving down the straights, where at the start of the Silverstone Grand Prix, Martin Brundle is saying Max is going to have to weave like crazy. And in Abu Dhabi on that final illegal lap, Max is weaving down that straight after he's passed Lewis Hamilton, with a dive bomb move that sends Lewis Hamilton well out wide of that corner. The one move rule to its limits, okay. And then we've got different ways. Racing alongside another car, okay. Oh, you've driven across the line of the other car. We've got entering the braking zone. We'll go through this in a different video, okay. Who owns the racing line? It tells you nobody owns the racing line. If you're next door to each other, you've got to leave track room for one another. So, what's going on? Attacker more than halfway alongside. Whose causes the problem? Oh, well, the problem is the car on the outside causing the problem. And these are the diagrams that Toto Wolff must have given to the stewards and to Massey, and that Martin's got in front of him, and he can't determine who's right and who's wrong. We know it relates to the braking zone. And we know the history of this. Martin's driven. He's lived it. He's commentated on it. And what needs to happen is, well, it gives you different examples there. Like I say, I'll leave you a link, so you're welcome to read this in your own time. But what needs to happen is there is a car on there, on the outside. It needs to leave you room, as we saw with Fernando Alonso attempting to overtake Daniel Ricciardo at that same race on the restart. Left him room. Two cars going into a corner, side by side. You've got to leave the other one room, not chop across it. And Martin Brundle, the expert of the sport, cannot tell you, the viewer, that that's the situation, and hence clearly make a determination as to who is at fault. There's a problem with that. Now, let's just listen to Martin again.
And we'll know sometime this evening.
Looking at the diagram that I believe Toto was referring to on the regulations, I've got a copy of actually for the first time, but it's all about, was there enough overlap? Was he far enough alongside to have earned the right to pass into that corner? And there was a significant overlap, as we know, and that will be the key. Obviously, by the time they got to the apex, Lewis was backing out of it. Max, with the mirrors these cars on, would not have known exactly where he was.
Look at the excuse made. Max, oh, the mirrors, Max wouldn't have known. It's your responsibility to know. It's your responsibility as a sports person, as an athlete competing in a sport, to know what's going on. You can't just make a claim, oh yeah, I just didn't know, so I committed an infringement.
And so I think that's why a lot of us are coming down to racing incident.
The fact...
Well, well, was it a racing incident or was somebody actually to blame? Did a car not leave the car on the inside space? But therefore it's not a racing incident, is it? Somebody's to blame.
is as well, that at this stage of the season, after the dominance that Red Bull have put in the last few races, there's no way Lewis Hamilton is going to back out of potentially the one chance he's going to have today to try and get past Max Verstappen, because once they get into Maggotts and Beckett's, as we saw in the sprint race yesterday, that Red Bull tends to pull clear. So Hamilton's...
And we get this narrative again. How dangerous is this? With the recent dominance of Red Bull. So we saw Baku, okay, whereby Max was leading, but, you know, maybe it was that track suited the Red Bull more than it did Mercedes. The race wasn't over. Lewis was still competitive in that race. Max unfortunately suffered a blowout. Lewis was on course to come second then at that point in time and didn't. Okay, made an error. So Red Bull won that race. We then went to France. Mercedes were in the lead, and due to a different strategy, Max caught and overtook Lewis with a lap and a half to go. That being said, Max was not penalised for what he did on the first lap of that race. So there's a victory for Max, and then they've gone to Red Bull's home track, the Red Bull Ring in Austria, where, again, does that track favour the Red Bull car? Well, is it inherently better for the Red Bull car than the Mercedes car? These are the changing dynamics over the course of an F1 season. But what you've then done in your presentation of the situation is to introduce this dynamic of desperation on behalf of Hamilton and Mercedes, and it being the notion of it being the one and only chance of Lewis Hamilton winning Silverstone was to get a move done on lap 1 of a 52-lap Grand Prix. You are painting a picture that the guy is desperate. So let's just replay the bit of Crofty there, because this is disgusting. Understand what is being presented to you and that it's just not true.
The fact is as well that at this stage of the season, after the dominance
The fact is, look how it's presented to you. The fact is
that Red Bull have put in the last few races, there's no way Lewis Hamilton is going to back out of potentially the one chance he's going to have today to try and get past Max Verstappen.
he's not going to back out of potentially the one chance he's going to get. So after 17 laps of a sprint race, Lewis Hamilton was 1.3 seconds adrift. That's just 17 laps. So you think he's only going to get one chance in a 52-lap race where they've got to change tyres, so pit stops will come into play, different tyre compounds will come into play, the setup of the car for a 52-lap event will come into play as opposed to just a 17-lap event. Lewis Hamilton's ability to track another driver down, set him up for an overtake. We've seen in several of the Grand Prix earlier this season, Lewis Hamilton isn't in the lead for the majority of the Grand Prix. That's why Max led the most amount of laps. It didn't matter, did it? Matters who crosses the finish line first, not who leads the most amount of laps. It's not about going 1-0 up in a game of football and leading till the 89th minute if you concede 2 late goals, is it? Because you've lost 2-1. Oh, but if you don't score in the first minute, that might be your last chance of winning the game of football. Look at the bullshit narrative being presented. But what they're doing, they are presenting this notion of desperation on behalf of Lewis Hamilton. All of this builds into the narrative of vilifying Lewis Hamilton for that manoeuvre. Why? So you've got to understand why. There's always a why. Always understand why, and that is because this isn't organic. When you watch any sport, you have experts of that sport, and what they talk about with their sport, if you've played sport, you can relate to what they're saying. You might not be able to do the same things as what these professional athletes could do, but if you have actually taken part in any of these sports, you can understand the principles of what these professionals are saying to you and understand how that relates to what's going on court. That develops your understanding. You could also, if you've played, you would know what they're talking about, what it feels like, the things they're describing. Okay, because you'll have done them sort of things, just not to quite the same level. But it makes sense. They help you make it make sense. These presenters aren't doing that. They're lying to you. Why are they lying to you? And they are all lying to you. Well, they are telling you this story because they want you to believe it, and they're all doing the same thing. That shows a systematic approach to conditioning your mind to believe this to be a certain way. Why would that be? Who wants that to be the situation? Who is controlling that dynamic? Because it doesn't happen organically. It's not normal. It is being controlled. It is being contrived. You are being fed a story. You are being fed a version of events that they want you to believe it to be. And some of the people that have got desires for it to be that way, they'll love that. Yes, everything that I want to happen is being fully justified by what is being said. And so they like that. And those of us that have been watching the sport for years and do understand it and do know what we've seen and we do know what's acceptable and what's not, we look at that and we think, well, no, that's not right. That's not congruent with everything else we've seen for years in this sport. And now you're trying to condition us to believe it to be a different way. What's going on here? Who is doing this? What's the motivation behind doing this? What is going on? And this is the problem. These are the questions you need to ask, because these are what you need to drill down to. This happened in Abu Dhabi, but the way they did it made most people believe what was going on is just normal for Formula One, because they conditioned you to believe that that is normal. They conditioned you with this notion that these messages that they interject with, oh yeah, that's just standard. These messages are there to direct your thought. Whenever they pick out a message between a team and the driver, or between a team and race control, it is there to direct your mind to think a certain way about the situation. Or it's there for this faux balance, okay? But actually the overriding message will be the other one that they put out, which is put over in a stronger context. But they'll claim, oh, well, we're presenting a 50-50 here, but not really. It's all part of what they're doing. And when you realise that, and again, I'm going to go through Abu Dhabi, it's going to take a long time to go through all of that and the things that they do throughout that race to condition you. There's so many things that now you can look back on during that race. Even the safety car, sorry, the virtual safety car situation in Abu Dhabi. And we get on the radio message that F1 TV have selected to play to you, to us, the audience. They select a radio message from Toto Wolff to Michael Massey saying, no, Michael, we don't need a safety car for this one. In what way is that relevant? Okay, you're watching a Grand Prix. The race control will decide how it is going to deal with that safety incident. If anybody gets on the radio to race control and says anything, it's irrelevant, isn't it? What matters is what race control is going to do. But they pick out that message. Why do they pick out that message? They know that it's nothing to do with Toto Wolff, but they still choose to broadcast that message to the world. Why do they want you to hear that message? This is part of the construct. People will, even when I say that to you, there'll be a certain percentage of people that just will go, what are you going on about? They won't be able to drill down to and understand, actually, yeah, why are we being presented with these sound bites at these moments in time? What is it that they want our thought process to be? And this is all part of the problem.
Because once they get into Maggots and Beckett's, as we saw in the sprint race yesterday, that Red Bull tends to pull clear. So Hamilton's going to stick at this as long as he possibly can.
Absolutely right. And I think in more recent times,
Absolutely right. So Brundle confirms the notion that Hamilton would have been essentially desperate for that lap one overtaking manoeuvre, because that would have been his only chance. Otherwise, Max would have disappeared off into the distance, into a 52-lap race where Lewis had set his car up for greater fast line speed, and after 17 laps of a sprint was only 1.3 seconds behind. And yet Brundle confirms the notion proposed by Crofty that was Hamilton's only chance. The two experts, the two presenters of the sport, telling you that was likely to be Lewis's only chance, otherwise Max would have run away with this Grand Prix as well. That's not normal. That's not normal. If that's the case, right, if that's what they want you to believe, when you watch a Grand Prix, just turn it on for the start, and after lap one, just switch the TV off. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. If he didn't overtake him on the first lap, it's race over. Oh, he did overtake him on the first lap. Oh, but the other car got him back. Oh, they changed tyres. They changed positions during pit strategy. Oh, something happened to one of the cars. Oh, one car got faster on this certain set of tyres. Oh, one car managed to track him down later on in the race and perform a late overtake with a lap and a half to go. What are they telling you? What's true? What have you seen happen in the sport of Formula One, and what are they proposing? Because they're not telling you the truth, are they? You've got experience of watching Formula One Grand Prix. Just 3 races before, you saw what happened in France. You saw Lewis Hamilton take the lead, and then you saw with a lap and a half to go, Max Verstappen overtook him for the lead. So it's possible, yeah? You saw every other single race that Lewis Hamilton won. He didn't lead that race from start to finish. He performed an overtake at some point during that race, which wasn't lap 1. But they're claiming that had Lewis Hamilton not have done that on lap 1 at Silverstone, Max would have just ran off into the distance and won the race. That's a narrative. That's a narrative to try and present Lewis Hamilton as being desperate and therefore guilty of causing that collision. Why would you try to vilify a man like that? Unless you are trying to down one competitor and boost the other. And that happened all season. That happened because it's a narrative. The sport was trying to create a new champion, somebody to topple Lewis Hamilton. It's disgusting.
Wheel-to-wheel combat we've seen between the two. Max has come off best when it's been a bit argy-bargy, for example.
And Brundle said, every wheel-to-wheel combat we've seen, Max has come off best when it's been a bit argy-bargy. So what is going on? What is going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on is the rules of engagement aren't being followed. What's going on is when we talk about Spain, when Max sent it, when we talk about Imola, where Max sent it and ran Lewis off track. Okay, this is what's going on here, right? This is like Spain, where Lewis, this collision didn't happen because Lewis put a jink in here to avoid it. Lewis was this blue car, and he was ahead because Max wasn't halfway alongside at the braking point. Lewis was entitled to this line that the blue car's taking, but Max sent it in this direction here, like that. So Lewis had to put a jink in, taking this line around here. That's not okay. You didn't call that out. Max didn't get punished. Oh, when it gets a bit argy-bargy, we describe it. We get to the ones where a car gets run off the track. So I think it's further down here. And we saw what happens when cars get run off the track at the previous race in Austria. If a car gets run off the track, I think it's the next one down. I don't know. We'll do it in another video. You get a 5-second penalty. What happened to Max in Imola? Nothing. Nothing to see here. Brundle describes it as, oh, Max had the racing line there. Oh, I don't think the stewards will do anything in these conditions. Well, we know we've got other stewards' reports saying it doesn't matter about the conditions. Drivers have got to drive to the conditions and make sure they're driving safely, regardless of the conditions. Who's telling you the truth? Who is conditioning you of a narrative? This is the problem.
Back in Imola in the rain, and Barcelona down into turn 1. So, and Max was pretty punchy all the way around that first lap. I think Lewis had made his mind.
Pretty punchy. So he went off track. First corner, I think it was. He sent it up the inside at turn 6, and then he didn't yield at 9, and ended up in the wall.
The next time they were in that situation, he was going to have to leave his wheels there, and
look at that, presenting it as though Lewis is leaving his wheels there. You know, that's a bit like in football when a player fouls another player, right, by going in too hard themselves, leaving their foot in, you know, purposefully making contact with the other person. That's the way that Martin Brundle describes Lewis Hamilton there, leaving his wheel in. No, That's not the truth of the situation. Lewis Hamilton had done enough to earn space around that corner. That's not leaving your wheel in. Okay, that is slipstreaming a car down a straight, having extra momentum, pulling alongside it, and then when you go into the braking zone for a corner, you go around that corner side by side, and therefore that's how you can perform an overtake. It's nothing to do with leaving a wheel in. Lewis had got himself to that position. Max then tried to force him out of that position by forcing himself ahead with force, and it didn't work. Previously, Lewis has seen that happening and backed out of it so that there wasn't a collision. This time, there was nothing that Lewis Hamilton could have done. The car just cut across him. There has to be a consequence for wrongdoing. And if there's no consequence for wrongdoing in life, people will continue to do it. They'll continue to do it because it benefits them to do it. If you do not receive a consequence for wrongdoing, you'll carry on because it's to your advantage to carry on. You keep winning, whatever your win may be. That's why we have rules. That's why we have laws. That's why they need to be enforced. Otherwise, it descends into chaos. Sport and life.
And play aggressive.
What's interesting is I've had a quick flick through social media, and there are as many people making the case for Max Verstappen as they are for Lewis Hamilton.
And you love that, don't you? You flick through social media, what people think in the comment section, people who have received an education from Drive to Survive or from your lies, rather than being explained the truth of the situation. People that look at this situation through biased views because of their desires, rather than have somebody clearly explain the situation, educate them with the facts of the situation, what's permissible, what's not, show them the diagrams, show them the rules of engagement, explain the rules to them. You don't do that. Instead, you speculate. Oh, could it be this? Could it be that? Oh, these are the diagrams that I'm looking at now. And what the stewards will be looking at is, did Lewis Hamilton have enough space? Was he far enough alongside? Show people. Evidence it. It's quite easy. That's where he was. That's where Lewis was. This is where the diagrams say he needs to be afforded track room. Was he there? Should he have been afforded track room? Yes or no? Quite simple. But you don't do that. You leave it open. Oh, let me know what you think in the comments section. Oh, social media is divided 50-50. Let them all argue. Let them have war in social media. We like war in social media because that causes clicks. That means Formula One is trending. That means the advertising revenue linked to the sport of Formula One is high on the agenda. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Formula One, the show that you need to get your business involved with, because that business reaches so many people now, because so many more people are interested in it. And therefore, when you attach your advertising to it, your business will be seen by so many more sets of eyes. Think of the value in that. That's what it's all about. Okay? Creating the controversy makes them money. And they're then just puppeting the show. They're directing the outcomes of the show. That's not sport. It's fucked up. And there are the underlying dynamics that are part of this.
On that one, and it's got you all talking, certainly, on this British Grand Prix Sunday afternoon. It's the first big clash between two championship protagonists since, remember, Spain, the Barcelona Spanish Grand Prix in 2016, when Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton had their collision, but that took them both out of that particular race at turn 3 that afternoon. What we have this afternoon is the championship leader, Max Verstappen, 33 points advantage.
You're not talking about the fact that there'd have been a collision in Spain had Lewis not have jumped out of the way. There'd have been a collision in Imola had Lewis Hamilton not gone off the track to avoid the collision. And now there's a collision now. So where's the problem here? Who's driving in a way which risks collisions? Where's the problem here?
Is going into this race out of the British Grand Prix after an accident at about 180 miles an hour after making contact with Lewis Hamilton, who was on the inside of that Copse corner.
It's a great shame, isn't it? Because it's taken away what was going to be an epic fight this afternoon, but
all
it's a long way to go yet.
I tell you,
oh, it's going to be an epic fight this afternoon. But I thought, okay, in the last breath, you're telling us, oh, if he didn't get it done on lap 1, then his strategy wouldn't have worked and Max would have just driven away with it. But now you're saying he's taken away what would have been an epic fight. So what's the truth? Where's the epic fight? Would it have been an epic fight that would have been contested over 52 laps? Or would it have been, oh, if he couldn't do it on lap 1, Max would have just run away, it would have been no contest? You're contradicting yourself. You're lying. And yet nobody's understanding that you're fucking lying. This is what's so fucking disgusting. This is what enrages me, okay? This is what the whole thing's a narrative. The whole thing is a narrative.
you what, all those that have come with Union flags with Lewis Hamilton written on it, I don't think any of them would say it's a great shame. I think that they'll be cheering Lewis Hamilton all the way through this race, but we'll go back to it. We're saying he doesn't start or restart this race in the lead. He's got a Ferrari in front of him.
Yeah, but I don't think he'll be too long dispatching that, if I'm honest.
Brundle makes a prediction. He doesn't think he'll be too long in dispatching that. How long did it take? When did Lewis Hamilton finally take the lead of the British Grand Prix? What, with a lap and a bit to go? But Brundle doesn't think it'll be too long in dispatching that. Let us know what you think in the comments section, please, Martin. Prick.
Honest in terms of the ultimate pace of those two cars, we'll see. But we also saw George Russell, while we were covering other stuff, having a very poor start, a lot of wheel spin. So sadly, he dropped down further to 14th. Kimi Raikkonen, whether you pointed out at the time, with a great start up to P9.
As I mentioned on the green light today, it's National Ice Cream Day, and there is no one more suited to celebrate National Ice Cream Day than the Iceman himself, the famous Magnum eater from Malaysia in 2009.
Fluffer.
He might have Magnums for life if he stays in ninth place. And
thank God he walked away. That's the biggest result that we'll have.
So what we get now, I'm going to switch very briefly to international view, which is like the global feed. They put Horner in front of the world camera again.
Centre, but he...
Okay, this is some presenter from F1 TV interviewing Horner, allowing Horner to once again spew his vilification of Sir Lewis Hamilton. Okay, so this is what people will see. This is what the third time that we've heard Horner, but again, we've heard him on the F1 TV have selected the radio message from Horner to Massey. They've then replayed that message for it to be clearer, where Crofty is not talking over it. And Crofty's, when he's talking over it, says, "Yeah, this is what I was expecting to hear," right? When Horner is vilifying Sir Lewis Hamilton. Then they play Jonathan Wheatley on the radio to Massey. Now they're getting Horner again, saying this.
So, yeah, just...
He might be more suited to celebrate National Ice Cream Day than the Iceman himself, the famous Magnum eater from Malaysia in 2009. He might have Magnums for life if he stays in ninth place. And
thank God he walked away. That's the biggest result that we'll have today. So... yeah, just relieved to see him. He's in the medical centre, but he's walked in there on his own. He's doing a 30-minute precautionary check, but hopefully, you know, so far so good.
We heard Jonathan on the phone to Michael Massey. What's your view of the incident?
For me, it's very clear. I mean, Lewis has stuck a wheel up the inside at one of the fastest corners on this World Championship. He's driven this circuit for years. You know, you don't do that here. And, you know, the result, thank God, we haven't had a driver that's been seriously injured or worse today.
Christian, thank you very much.
So that's the third time you've heard that. You say things in threes and people believe it. I learnt that at Abu Dhabi. Now, he then gets interviewed by Kravitz after the event, and that's the interview that I've gone through that you'll be able to see for yourself on YouTube. How many times does this man get a platform to vilify Sir Lewis Hamilton, to incite the hatred against him, to incite the Max fans, the strap-on fanboy that doesn't have the ability to assess the situation for themselves, to look at the situation with a reasoned understanding and determine who is actually responsible and accept responsibility, accept that their guy was at fault there. Instead, they get incited by that hateful little cunt, right, inciting them and vilifying Sir Lewis Hamilton, knowing that it's going to cause the racial abuse that he received after that event. He's a filthy fucking piece of turd. A cunt of a man.
Well, in the 10 minutes or so, maybe more, since we heard Christian Horner's team radio message, Martin, no signs of his anger dissipating in any way, shape or form there.
No, because his, World Championship leading driver has been knocked about. His car's absolutely trashed.
Being knocked about. Again, look at the way this is presented. Look at the emotions that this is going to stir up within people.
And he's probably not going to get any World Championship points much to talk about today, with Perez still very much last because he started from the pit lane. So, yeah, no wonder Christian's having a bit of a strop on there and not happy, because it's been an awful hour or so.
And 1 minute to go.
An awful hour or so. So, with 47 minutes into this kind of footage from F1 TV, the crash would have occurred maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes in. So we've spent 40 minutes of their coverage vilifying Lewis Hamilton, confirming that vilification, getting experts' opinions to vilify Sir Lewis Hamilton. None of them have been able to give you a breakdown and isolate the evidence, the frame by frame, showing you exactly what happened, show you the rules, show you these rules of engagement, show you the diagrams, what's allowed, what isn't. Instead, all of them pile in on Sir Lewis Hamilton. Why?
Until we can get underway again. Karun Chandok at Sky Race Control.
Yeah, Crofty, first of all, I was listening to Max Verstappen's radio when he had the crash, and the engineers came on to ask him, are you okay? And all I heard was him sounding winded, and he actually sounded like he was in a bit of pain. So I'm very glad to hear from Christian Horner that he is okay and be clear the medical center. It's interesting now, the others are all getting straight back into race mode. Lewis Hamilton and the engineers there going through the procedures. What do they need to do on the formation lap? The funniest one for me was Charles Leclerc saying, am I starting from P1? And his engineer's like, yes, Charles, you are in the lead. You will start from P1.
This is kind of like a bonus pole for Charles Leclerc that he missed out on in Monaco when he got a proper pole and then couldn't take part in the race.
Oh, and that seemed to help Max Verstappen, didn't it?
Yeah, because they've suspended the race under the red flag. You don't have the count back to the last complete lap before the
Oh, and that can't be done by design, can it?
red flag was shown. So yeah, it is literally he was leading as the flag came out, and that's where he'll start now.
Is it difficult for a driver in Lewis Hamilton's position, where he doesn't think he caused an accident, but he knows he was involved in one?
He didn't think he caused an accident. Again, look at the slant they put on this all the time.
To go back into race mode and to be as clear and as focused as they need to be, now we're heading to the restart.
No, not really. He's been doing this since he was 7 or 8 years old.
True.
So it's just this is like going into the office for him. This is what they do. So what I'm expecting to happen, I haven't seen any signs of it yet, is that they will follow the safety car out. It will then extinguish its lights, and we should surely have a standing start.
We should have a standing start now. When the race got red flagged at Imola earlier in the season, we restarted with a rolling start. Martin's predicting a standing start here. Let's see if these commentators know the rules of the sport. and how far these rules go back as to when they might have changed.
So, new rules came in a little while ago now, actually, to restart Formula One races after a red flag. No more rolling starts. And as we saw in the earlier
Oh, no more rolling starts, but we've got a rolling start in Imola. So at the start of the race in Imola, when it was wet, that was a grid start, a standing start. So when Max Verstappen was in third, it's a standing start. But when Max is in the lead and able to control the restart, when the track is dry or drier, oh, we'll do a rolling start. Who does that benefit? Strange, all these decisions seem to benefit one competitor. But the narrative's the other way. Nobody exposes that. According to the strap-on fanboy, there's just a victim all season. You had no luck. You fully deserved it. You had no luck all season. You absolutely deserved it. You absolutely deserved it.
formation lap. Two Mercedes desperate to try and get some tyre temperature into those medium tyres before the standing start, and it will be a standing start.
Yeah, safety car lights went out down the Wellington Straight, and therefore, wholly unsurprisingly, particularly given the stellar conditions, we're going to have another standing start, and off they'll go.
They're going to be
Right, that'll do for this one. But what I'll do another video, because I'm going to have to go through the Grand Prix, because throughout the Grand Prix they still hark back to this incident and mention the notion of Lewis being at fault for the collision and therefore him now gaining benefit at the detriment of Max Verstappen. And what does that do throughout the entire event? Okay, diminishing Lewis Hamilton's accomplishment and inciting the Max Verstappen fans throughout Silverstone 2021. And then we wonder why we get online hate. And then we wonder why we get online abuse. Yet we know the dynamics of that. We know what it's all about. But then we get the FIA making up the banner, hashtag against online hate. Oh, because that's doing a lot, isn't it? You're causing it, you fuckers. But you make a little badge and go, oh yeah, but we're against it. Good for us. Good for us. Is that called virtue signalling, is it? Let me know what you think in the comments section with your virtue signalling definitions. Thank you very much for your time.